Welcome to the Astrology Hub podcast. I'm Amanda Poole-Walsh, founder of Astrology Hub and your host for our flagship show. We explore the many ways astrology can support you in your relationships, career, health, and personal growth. Thanks for tuning in.
This podcast episode is brought to you by the Inner Circle, your place to learn astrology in community with the masters and transform your life in the process.
Well, hello and welcome. We are so happy that you're here and that you're back with us today, exploring the 12 houses in astrology. Today, we're going to be exploring the fourth house, and I'm here with shamanic astrologer and upcoming Inner Circle astrologer teacher, Cayelin Castell, who will be guiding us through all things fourth house. Just in case you're just hopping into this series, the house series here at Astrology Hub podcast is dedicated to helping you understand what all 12 houses mean and what they represent in your life. We're taking them house by house, and each week we're releasing a new episode focused on one of the houses and taught by one of our Inner Circle astrology teachers. We've gathered the most commonly asked questions about the fourth house, and we will be covering those here today. And I just want to tell you a little bit about Cayelin, which I am so happy that she is here today covering this particular house. I think we have a lot of amazing things to share with all of you. Cayelin is the co-founder of the Venus Alchemy and the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School. In addition to writing monthly celestial timings for 25 years, she enjoys sharing these mysteries through personal readings and teaching both online and in-person events, changing lives and perspectives from the visionary understanding that we inform the mysteries as much as they inform us. Cayelin, welcome back to the Astrology Hub podcast. We're so happy that you're here.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Amanda. It's fun.
Yes, fun. Great word. If you haven't already downloaded the free gift that accompanies this series, you can do so at astrologyhub.com/ruler. That gift is going to help you identify the rulers of each house in your chart. So if you're curious about that, and Cayelin will probably be talking about that here today, you can download that free gift right now. Again, that's astrologyhub.com/ruler. Okay, so Cayelin, let's talk about the fourth house. What does it mean? What does it represent?
Such a good question. And I just want to start by saying that there's a lot of different ways to look at these things. And I know astrologers will have certain perspectives. I'm looking at it from the perspective of intent. So what planets are in your fourth house, if you have any, maybe you don't. What sign is on your fourth house cusp? Those kinds of things. And there's different. So what's the intent? And if we look at the fourth house as being about how we are living inside ourselves, and it also will often be expressed in our external reality at our home, our family, all those different things. And something that I have really been seeing so strongly lately is that the fourth house, especially if there's planets in the fourth house, but even just whatever sign might be on your fourth house cusp, does indicate what are the ancestral patterns that you are here to help heal, to help transform, to help, move into a new way of being, because, we've all got ancestral trauma. We've all got challenges, and we're all, I think anybody who's listening to this, anybody who's interested in these kind of mysteries have come because they're here to help change those old patterns, those old ways of being. And the fourth house really can be representative of not only whatever it is that we're experiencing right here and now in our inner being, as well as, in our family life, our community life, all of that, but anything that goes back through the annals of time, so to speak.
I love that. It's almost like our assignment here in this lifetime to actually transform those ancestral patterns that have been happening for who knows how long. I love that, Cayelin. You also said something very interesting in the beginning that I haven't heard before, which is the fourth house representing how we are living within ourselves. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I feel like, especially because, well, it depends on your house system. So, is your IC is your home in roots, or IC standing for Amum, I-M-U-M, Coeli, Latin for lower heavens, but it's also what's within us. And oftentimes it's perceived more as like what's our external family, but it really represents how are we meant to live inside ourselves? And so that's the way I like to look at it. And sometimes the IC will be in the fourth house, but no matter if it is or isn't, the fourth house will represent that, depending on your house system, depending on what house system you're using. And something else I wanted to say about ancestral patterns that we're here to heal is that there are also ancestral gifts. And when we can transmute and transform the things that hold us back from tapping into those ancestral gifts, then we can also start to integrate that more into the depth of who we are, into our inner being, into our inner sense of who we are and how we're showing up in the world. And it can be a long journey, and it can be an ongoing journey. You might get different levels of that. You might find that you're thinking you're doing pretty well, and then something comes along and maybe, like for me, I've had Saturn transiting through my fourth house for the last couple of years, and it's like a lot of stuff has been going on around that, and I'm like, okay, look, I still have another layer. I have another level of this, of like letting go of the old patterns, letting go of the old things that are, have been maybe really kind of stuck in a certain way, and opening the space for something new, a new way of being with those energies coming through.
Can you give us a few examples of how the sign on the house cusp would help you decode some of the ancestral patterns that you're here to heal? Or I love what you just brought up about the ancestral gifts. We don't talk about that enough. That yes, there's things, there's wounds and there's traumas and things, but there's also gifts that we may not be tapping into. I'm really glad you brought that up. But can you give us a few examples of how this might look for someone?
Yeah. So let's say you have, let's start with Aries on the house cusp. That this might really represent the opportunity to see it as a mission, a purpose, and a cause. Like the noble warrior, the one who's going to defend and protect the cosmic order of life, especially the family, whatever that might be. Now, of course, the shadow side of that might be defending your family, even if they're wrong, or even if they're doing evil, not good things in the world. But how is it that that energy is here to really, I like to call it restoring cosmic justice. So whether that's in your ancestral line, within yourself and your inner being, with those around you, how do we create a safe space? Here's something that's interesting, that the ancient midwives did not help a woman give birth. What they did was they created a safe space for her to give birth. So they protected her from wild animals or other, people or whatever coming in and interrupting her birth process. That was their job. That's kind of like what I think of Aries. It's like, how are we protecting the new space to birth something new? And in the fourth house, it would be around our family, the ancestral line. How do we get to a place where we can remember that it is about protecting, creating a safe space for us to be who we really are. Because if it's not safe, a lot of times people will just show up and try to fit in to what they think is being expected of them, and they're not being really authentic with who they are.
So we take whatever sign is on the cusp of the fourth house, and you'll be able to see how to identify. If you don't know how to identify that, you'll be able to see how to do that in the free gift that we have. And so you apply the qualities of that sign to fourth house things like family, external or internal, which I think, again, I'm trying to wrap myself around how you would interpret that. What do we mean by the internal family?
Right. Or what's it within us, or how are we living inside ourselves?
So what is like ourself as a home, almost to think about, like if we're creating a home for ourselves to be ourselves within ourselves.
Right.
Yeah. How are we doing that? Yeah.
So how, it's like, what is the intent? How am I developing a way of being within myself that feels safe, that feels supported, that feels accepted, that feels valued, that feels these things? That's what it's really about. So I'll just give you another quick example. I have Aquarius on the 4th house, so I can speak into that because it's my personal experience.
Mhm.
I was born into a family that was not usual. They were outside of ordinary reality. And so I grew up, my parents were Rosicrucians, went to Unity Church, was involved in transcendental meditation. I was initiated into transcendental meditation when I was 16 years old. I was always the strange kid. Like, I was interested in reincarnation. And, I grew up in rural Colorado where it was like, those kinds of things just freaked people out.
Wow.
So that's very, of course, but for me to get comfortable, so I learned how not to say some of these things because, as a kid, you kind of just say things and then you watch people go, ugh.
Yes.
Okay, no, that doesn't work for Mennonites, Methodists, and Catholics, and whatever.
Right.
So I had to learn how to get comfortable with that within myself, and also not to need to necessarily have other people share that with me, except maybe in my immediate family. And the other thing is that then, depending on what planets are in that house, and I do have Chiron and Mercury both in my 4th house, so there was always a desire to communicate these things. And what I find now, the way that it has worked for me, like here I am sitting at home, communicating to the world from home. I love that. And it's also on these kind of cutting edge out there ideas that aren't typical to, it's Aquarius kind of stuff. So that's just kind of an example of how that can manifest for people. And really it's like, are we trying to fit in or be what we're being told we should be, or are we really paying attention to what's true and alive and authentic for each of us? And I feel like this understanding has helped me just so much to be like, okay, it's okay that I'm not the same as everybody else.
Wow, that's
and find my tribe
point.
and my community. So like here we are an astrology hub, and I love astrology and have an astrology this community, and there's other communities and that kind of thing. So it's like, then I get to feel like I'm really at home because I'm seen and I'm supported and I'm safe, and people aren't telling me that I'm crazy and
Right. Yes. Well, isn't astrology an Aquarian thing in general? Like it isn't, there's probably some debate about that, but is that usually an accurate?
It is, but I think that's more from a mental perspective. For me, and the way that I like to look at astrology, I think it's more Virgo. It's a sacred connection to the earth and the sky, to the timings and the seasons, and to doing ceremony and to working the magic of the timing that's happening. To me, that is more, that's the way I like to look at it. But actually, you could probably relate astrology to all the signs in some way.
True.
So,
yeah. Okay. If someone's looking at their chart, does the 4th house, and from your example that you just gave of your own family, I think the answer to this is yes, but can the 4th house tell someone about their family? Or if they were reading somebody else's chart, would they be able to interpret things about that person's family by looking at the 4th house?
I think that we can get clues. And it doesn't necessarily mean, because it's not everybody, like, so say somebody has Saturn in the 4th house, and maybe they grow up in a very restrictive, like, fundamentalist kind of family situation. There's a lot of rules, and it doesn't matter what signs on the 4th house cusp. It's like they still have to deal with that, and it makes it difficult. Or maybe they have Pluto in the 4th house, and so there's a lot of trauma and a lot of challenges that can come from many different directions, whether that's physical, mental, emotional abuse, or that's maybe a parent dies when you're young and then you have to deal with that. So many different, so we can't necessarily know exactly what it means, like how it manifested, but we can have a sense of what a person might have encountered in terms of Saturn, all about the rules and the structure and kind of more restrictive and limiting initially, because that's not really what Saturn's about. It's just how we tend to experience it, especially in our younger years. And then, or Pluto, which has to do with maybe dealing with trauma or that kind of thing, but it's that the Pluto's job is really to shine the light on the shadow. So whatever that experience is, it's like bringing that shadow to light so we can become more empowered. And so, maybe Pluto in the fourth house is also a strong, super strong indication that you came to heal family of bloodline and also soul lineage issues. And it might not be fun and it might not be easy at first, but once you get to that place of really having transformed a lot of it, then it gets easier. And you feel more empowered and you're like, wow, looking back now, I'm really glad I went through all that.
Right.
While I was going through it, I was like, not so happy about it.
Isn't that always true of Pluto transits?
I think so.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So question that you just alluded to this, but does the fourth house usually represent your parents, your biological parents, or is it also the family that you create?
I would say probably both. And like I said, my parents were definitely outside the box, very Aquarian types themselves. And they were also extremely wounded. I also have Chiron in my fourth house. So that makes total sense, like super wounded parents. And of course, they tended to pass some of that on. And, but it's also how we create our own family. And so here I am, a mother of 4 children. They're all grown now. My oldest just turned 40. My youngest is 32. I have twins that are 37. So, they're all grown. They're all doing their own thing. But I was not a typical mother. I was definitely not a super nurturing, let me take care of everything for you. I really taught them to be independent and to how to take care of themselves. And also because they would tell their friends that I was the tree hugging, granola eating hippie mom. And I taught them ceremony and I taught them how to go look at the sky and all of those things. So very Aquarian and how I expressed my, being a mother and parenting. I didn't do it in a typical kind of way.
Oh my, I'm so curious about your children now. I mean, how are they into astrology? Are they into these things or did they sort of rebel against it?
Well, so they're into it. They in fact, my twins particularly tend to be more into it. But they will come to me and they have an issue and they're like, okay, what's going on, Mom?
So they respect it. It may not be their path, but they respect it and they understand it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Is the fourth house the same thing as Cancer?
There's a lot that says that it's very similar. That one of the things that I think of, and that I appreciate that there's been this perspective of rulership, like this rules that and that rules that. I feel like maybe we're moving out of hierarchy and out of rules. And maybe because I have an Aquarius fourth house.
I'm thinking
rules
that.
be gone.
Yeah.
Rules be gone. I don't want to deal with rules, but resonance. So I think that Cancer resonates most with the fourth house. If you have Cancer on the fourth house cusp, it's like, oh yeah, you're totally going to be relating to those kinds of things. If you have a different, like for me, Aquarius on the fourth house cusp, there's going to be a blending of those Cancer mysteries of creating home, family, safe space, getting to, create a space for you to be more authentically who you are and your children or your family or your community or the people you work with or whoever that's going to be. That's the intent, to have to bring that sense of how it is to be safe and supported in your uniqueness, in your expression, in whatever that creative expression might be.
When people have a lot of planets or no planets in the fourth house, how do you interpret that? Does that mean if they have a lot of planets there, does that mean the fourth house is more of an important theme for them in this life? If they have no planets there, does that mean anything? How do you interpret those things?
Yeah. So I think when whatever planet the house, whatever house a planet is in, adds another understanding towards that planet. So for example, as I was saying, I have Mercury in the fourth house. And so communication, creative expression, and all of that is influenced by the fact that if I'm at home within myself, then I'm able to do that in a better way. If I feel traumatized or threatened, or then it all just goes away. Right. So for me, I need to feel safe.
Let's take another sign, right? So I have Gemini on the fourth house. So that would mean if I'm comfortable in myself, if I feel at home, then I am more capable of doing Gemini things like speaking, communicating.
Yes.
If someone
having
had
a creative expression and doing that in a way that people can feel like, oh, I want to connect with that because I like how she is expressing that, how she's bringing that forth, how she's communicating that, because I feel safe in that environment. I feel safe in that form of communication.
but it starts with me feeling safe, right?
Yes.
So how I'm safe in myself, if I'm safe in myself, then I can create a quote unquote home for others to feel safe and do the Gemini things of communicating, connecting, and sharing ideas together. Yes. Oh, that's fascinating. And it's very true. I mean, I would say that in my quote unquote past life, before I was doing Astrology Hub, right, I didn't feel as safe in the environment. I was in this very young tech, very different world in New York City. And I had to protect. It was like, I would feel like I'd have to hold back on some level because I wasn't totally safe to just be myself.
Yes.
So interesting. Okay.
You haven't created the environment around you yet that helped you to feel safe within yourself so that you could create a safe environment around you to be able to have your creative expression.
Okay. So if people have planets in the fourth house, then they just have another layer of interpretation that they can do around the way that they are creating safe space, around the way that they're creating home environment, whether that's within themselves or for an actual family or even for a community like Astrology Hub would be.
Yes.
And so they would have more layers of understanding of how they're doing that in this lifetime.
Yes. Yeah. It's like always the fourth house is going to represent how we're living inside ourselves, how we're living with others, how, all of the things that we think of. And it's not limited to family, it's community, it's tribe, it's, whoever we're connecting with, that kind of thing. And then we'll be gravitating towards the places where we feel safer, where we feel more supported, where we feel valued, gotten, those kinds of things. Maybe not as early on, not so much as early on, because we're still learning how to figure that out. But as we get older, we start to figure that out more. And then we can recognize right away, yeah, that community doesn't really work for me. It's like, right. It's too shaming. It's too many rules. It's too, whatever it is that doesn't resonate for you. And, and if you need to, like, for example, say if it's Leo, it's like you need to feel safe to shine, to be who you are, to show up in that sense of, like, okay, I have this high vibrational energy of love that I'm putting into the world, and I need to be safe to be able to do that. I have to feel safe to do that.
Wow.
And otherwise it gets distorted. And then I'm looking to others to help me feel like I'm okay, or that I'm, good enough, or whatever that's about. That's a distortion. That's like the shadow side of that. So when you get to the place where you can really come from that place of really healthy self-love, then, and feel safe within your, you've created the safe environment within yourself to feel that, then you're good to go.
Okay. So taking the sign that's on the house cusp and saying, what do I need to feel safe to express this aspect of myself?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Fabulous. I think we can look at all the different signs and apply that. And if people don't have planets in the fourth house, it doesn't mean they don't have any place where they're going to feel safe, or they're not going to have family, or they're not going to have homes. It just means that they take that zodiac sign and that is the energy of the fourth house for them. They don't have anything else sort of adding to that conversation.
Right. So we could say, what's your fourth house signature, right? So what's the sign of the fourth house cusp? What are the planets in the fourth house, if there are any? If there aren't any, then you're not adding to that signature.
Got it.
But the primary thing that we're looking at is what's the intent? What are the kinds of energies that will help us to feel, when we're healthy within ourselves, will help us to feel more at home within ourselves.
Right. Okay. So I have some questions here that come in, people ask a lot about the fourth house. And one of them is, and you've already answered this, does the fourth house relate to our inner self? And you've said yes. There's also a question of, what does that mean? What is the inner self? And I mean, there's a lot of different ways to explore this. When you were speaking earlier, I was thinking of the whole family constellation idea, and that we literally have a whole constellation of a family inside of us.
Yes.
But so when you're talking about inner self, what do you mean?
The inner self is the part of us that isn't distorted by the outer reality.
Mm.
And it connects to our purpose. It connects to why we're here. It connects to something deeper, so that we're, where we're not necessarily distracted by who we think we should be, and instead of who we really are. Yeah. And so for a lot of people, initially, it's hard to really even have a sense of what your inner self is, because we have so many influences from the external reality, our parents, our culture, our, whatever situations we're growing up in, challenges we meet in our educational system and that kind of thing. So it can take a while but if you can see this for your children, you can really support them in being able to, not like, it's like, give them the support to be who they are rather than who you want them to be.
That for me has been, as a mom, one of the biggest gifts of astrology. I mean, astrology's gifts, my list of what it has given me grows every day. But at one of the things at the top is that insight into the unique expression of my two daughters and how different they are, and how to create a space for them to be who they are, the best that they can be, not who I want them to be or who society thinks they should be, or any of those things. So it's such a gift. So I love what you just said about inner self, and also bringing out that if you're not totally clear on who your inner self is, that actually is quite natural. And part of what we're doing here is to really get clear on that.
Yeah.
So another question that comes in that feels random to me, but I'm sure there's some reason why this question comes up, but and these are going to feel like a huge divergence from some of the things we've been talking about. But does the fourth house have anything to do with real estate?
I suppose. I mean, if you think about real estate being perhaps the home you own, you have real estate, or that kind of thing. I do remember, it's like I got a Vedic astrology reading years and years ago. And I don't know if it was fourth house matters or what it was that this Vedic astrologer was saying, that I would always do well when I owned a home, and that somehow it would always work out for me. And it has.
Actually makes a ton of sense to me based on everything that you've shared so far, because it probably can give insight into the type of home that would make you feel safe and comfortable and nourished. And so you could probably look at the sign and then apply that to what type of real estate, what type of home, what type of physical structure you would want to create in order to feel safe and taken care of.
Yeah. And for some people, they're more like a rolling stone. They don't necessarily want to have a permanent place. So they'll rent, and then they'll move, and then they don't ever just really settle down into one place, because that's not what is really alive for them. I can say that of my twins who have Gemini in the and so they have Sag on the fourth house, so their Gemini's in the 10th, but Sag too, because it's all about exploration and travel and journey, and so they haven't really settled down into like a quote unquote normal life. They have continued to do things in their own kind of way, and especially my son, who is a stuntman. He'd been a stuntman all over the world, and so he's been in different places, and he would go to work for a few months, and then he'd come back to the US for a little while, and then he'd go back again. And, he was bouncing back and forth. Then 2020 happened. That all came to an end. So now he's in an apartment, and deciding whether he wants to just like stay put in some place for a while. But not everybody's going to want that. So it's like figuring out what really works for you.
That was just a huge aha moment, because with Gemini on, I have owned a home, but after I bought it 6 months later, I moved. So I had this home that then I felt saddled with. And ever since then, it's been like, I don't really know if I even want to, because I love the flexibility and the mobility and the freedom of not being saddled to any one place, which makes sense with Gemini on the cusp for my fourth house, right?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. Well,
Wow.
sometimes what I'll say to people who have that, you might feel good having a home base, but that you can travel from, so you can do it that way. But sometimes people just need to be able to pick up and go.
Yes.
So
Okay.
it's
So
not
it does
just
have
one
something to do
way.
with real estate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What's the link? This, again, it feels random, but I'm sure it's coming from somewhere. What's the link between the fourth house and farming?
I have no idea. I mean, I guess if you are connected to the soil, to the earth, and how we're, if we're farming, if somebody's into farming, then they're growing their own food, and maybe for others as well, depending on, it's like, I don't think they're talking about industrial farming. So that's a whole different,
Probably not.
probably a different thing.
Yeah.
But, having gardens and that kind of thing would seem like that's a way to create a safe, nurturing, like, you've got food because you're growing your own.
True. Yes. Yes. Okay. And then is the fourth house also related to the father?
Well, if you think about parents, parenting, mother, father, so yeah, I would say probably yes, that's the case. There's other ways you can look at parents as well, and different things that can represent what that might look like.
Give us some examples of that.
So for example, I'll use myself because I can tap into that quickly, and that is, I have Saturn square my sun. And sun represents father. Saturn also can represent father. And I had a very difficult relationship with my father. And in fact, he disowned me when I was 40 years old. He disowned me twice. He disowned me when I was a teenager, when I was like 19 or 20, and then and didn't speak to me for 10 years. And then we kind of had a little reconciliation, and then he disowned me again and never spoke to me until the last 16 years of his life. He never spoke to me. So that can be definitely like a Saturn Sun relationship, if that makes sense.
I'm just having such a hard time believing this. You're like the sweetest, kindest, most amazing person. It's like, what was your father like? I mean, and this is so interesting.
Definitely, as a counselor told me, he was a malignant narcissist. So
yeah.
yeah.
Amazing. But it's amazing how the chart speaks to that. So you could see that conflict, that tension really clearly. Saturn square the sun in your
He did
chart.
not want children, and he wanted my mother to have an abortion. So he didn't want me. He feels like I ruined, he told me many times I ruined his life because I came into this world. So that's like a really dramatic kind of Saturn sun, or Saturn to the father, or like a father expression.
Mm-hmm.
And I forgive him. I feel like I've really worked a lot on that, and I have repeated some of those patterns in my life, and which gave me an opportunity to do some deeper healing around that.
Yeah.
But now I feel like I've done that, and I'm with a partner who loves and adores me, supports me like I've never been supported in my whole life. Mm-hmm. I'm loved like I've never been loved before. Mm-hmm. I've done the work.
God, I'm really happy to hear that. That is good. What happens? You've mentioned it a little bit already, but what happens when we have planets transiting through our fourth house?
It puts a spotlight on how we're living inside ourselves, of course, right? And how we're, and also it can be reflected in terms of how, our family, home environment, our community, and, the people that we're connecting with and feeling like, I think of, there's bloodline, the people that we're blood related to, and there's soul family, soul lineage, the people that we're connected to maybe from lifetimes, because you meet people and it's like, oh, I know we know each other. Sometimes those are challenging relationships, but what are we working out with them? And those things can get spotlighted, especially depending on if it's Saturn, that can definitely bring it up. If it's Pluto, if it's Chiron, different things will bring up the family of origin and the ancestral line, and are also whatever we've created going forward.
You know what I love so much about this is just how clearly the universe shines a spotlight on different aspects of our life. And the houses just so clearly represent all these different aspects of our life. And how when we have planets in there, it's like, okay, this is where your focus is right now. This is where you need a lot of attention. I remember there was a period of time in my life when I was trying to launch a business. It was shortly after I'd moved from New York to Hawaii. I felt financial pressure. I knew I needed to create something new because I had just left my whole career behind, and nothing worked. Nothing was moving. Nothing was going. And of course, this is right when astrology came into my life, and the astrologer that I was working with at the time said, your career is not the thing lit up in your life right now. This is not the place where you're going to have any energy. There's nothing really supporting you here to launch something new, but your family, that's where your focus needs to be right now. That's what is, lit up in your life and where all the energy is. So focus there, trust that, and you'll have the opportunity to focus on career when it's time. But it really helps us direct our focus, direct our energy, to direct our attention to the place where, I always think of the wind is in your sails in this area of your life, and it's not over there. So you can continue trying to swim upstream, but it's going to be very exhausting.
And for some people, their work environment is their family and their home.
Yes.
Think about that. And so sometimes then there's disruption in that, or there needs to be a change or a shift in that. And I'm guessing that perhaps you left maybe during this, whatever the planet transit was through your fourth house at that time, that you may have completed with whatever the old thing was and was moving to the new thing. But it's like you needed to get the foundation under you before you could go and launch into something new.
Oh, completely. Yes.
And if you think about it, it's like the fourth house is the foundation. It's at the bottom of the chart. It's like what's underneath us when we're born. Right? So if our foundation isn't in a healthy, strong, stable place, things are going to be kind of chaotic and all over the place.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And also if the foundation that we've built is faulty, like the roots, either the roots aren't deep enough in the ground, or it's based on faulty or even a past version of ourselves that maybe needs to be updated.
Yes.
Then those things need to sort of fall apart for a moment so we can rebuild something new.
Yeah. Sometimes you can remodel. You can rebuild or remodel, like whatever, but sometimes you just have to completely leave that and go do something else.
Oh, mine needed to be completely bulldozed. Wow. That's for sure. Yes. I was hoping for a remodel, but it was like, oh no, there's too many cracks in the foundation. We need to really just bulldoze this thing over. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Well, and Pluto was involved too. So that actually, Pluto was squaring my nodes. So that was like, okay, no, total transformation is needed. Yeah.
Sometimes I refer to that as having your life burned to the ground.
Yes. It's exactly what it felt like. Yeah. And if any of you out there are going through that, I mean, it can be the most uncomfortable, disorienting, challenging time of your life, and excruciating. Yes, there you go. Excruciating. And it is, I love to trust in the intelligence of the universe and trust in the intelligence of the design, that in some ways there's these experiences that we signed up for in order to really come back to that place of what is my inner self? What is my deepest truth? What is my actual path in this lifetime? And sometimes there's a big, huge course correction that's required, and it's not comfortable.
And when we can align ourselves and go, okay, I need to let this go and go in the new direction, it's easier. But
Yeah.
if we don't and we resist, and when the first time my life was burned to the ground, I didn't know any of this. Hadn't gotten into astrology yet. And I was like, why is God punishing me? I'm
Yeah.
doing everything right. I'm showing up. I'm being a good person. I'm trying to do the best I know how to do.
Yeah.
And it's not working.
Oh
This is
my
so
God.
unfair. I'm being a good person. Why are you punishing me?
God, I remember this, a very similar thought. And mine was, it was the beginning of me sort of getting into spirituality and astrology and all these things and thinking, okay, well, if I'm creating my universe and if I'm the one who sort of designed this, why the heck would I design this? Why would I have ever asked for this? This is like the antithesis of anything I ever thought I wanted. And yet in retrospect, I see the beauty of the design now. And normally that's what happens. Time and distance and going through the experience, you can look back and go, God, that really was the best thing that ever happened, but it was really painful.
Because it gets you to a better place.
Yeah.
It's like you would have never gotten to if you stayed in the old place, but it
Right.
gets you to a better place. And then you're like, oh, now I get it. I wasn't being punished. I was being redirected, as you
Oh,
were
yes.
redirected into something even better that I couldn't even imagine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh God. Okay. Well, this has been so helpful. I hope that all of you feel like you have a better grasp and understanding of the fourth house. I know that the natural thing to do is to start to go look at your chart, go see which sign is on the house cusp of your fourth house. So you can start to interpret it, make sense of it. If you don't know how to do that yet, that's okay. Just be with whatever information was revealed to you through this talk and will continue to be revealed to you as you continue to look into your chart and dive deeper and immerse yourself in this language of astrology that does reveal itself in layers. It's not something that you just get overnight. It's not just, and even when you get it, you're still going to get layers revealed to you over time, right?
Mhm. Oh yeah, that's the thing that's so fun about it, for especially people who get bored with something that's like, okay, this is it and that's it, no, nothing more. No, it's always something new. There's always something more to be revealed, and new layers of understanding and insight and aha that comes when we're working with these mysteries.
It's the study of an ever expanding universe. So there is no end to our learning, which is, I know it can feel overwhelming and intimidating at times, but also it's the most amazing thing. I mean, and the thing that I love about it too is that at every level of discovery, you're learning more about yourself and you're learning more about the world and you're learning more about the people in your life. And so things are continuously improving and deepening and being enriched as you go along. Yeah.
And just to say quickly, when you know what time it is for you, like you got that insight from the astrologer saying it's not really about the time of you launching a business. This is really more about the time about working on you and creating your foundation and stability and all of that. When we're being informed by that, that's how the mysteries are informing us. And then we go and do the work and we're helping to inform them, and we're co-creating with great mystery as a result of that understanding. And then what can happen is far more amazing than anything we've maybe previously imagined.
Ooh, I love that so much. And I completely resonate and agree with that perspective. It's been my experience. It's less agreeing than more just this is my experience. And it's so magical and wondrous the whole entire time. Yeah. Cayelin, I'm so happy you're going to be with us as an Inner Circle astrologer in 2023. Can you give us a sneak peek into the mastery class that you'll be teaching?
And I'm thinking what I'm going to do is, and it's so fascinating, I'm doing the fourth house because that connects to, resonates with Cancer and the moon. And what I want to do is do something on the moon. And we're coming into this 19-year lunar standstill that is when the moon's out of bounds every twice a month. And there's just all these amazing things that are connected to that. But also, what phase of the moon are you born into? And what is it? There's certain when we have that moon phase that repeats itself every month, and then every 19 years it comes back on the birthday.
Mm.
pretty exact within a day or so. Those are high magic times. And so how can we work with that? And also another thing is that for women, this was something that would help them know about their fertility cycle.
So what moon phase were you born in? What phase was the moon in when you were born? And how does that continue to play out and inform different things that happen throughout your life?
Yeah.
And it's not something that a lot of astrologers talk about. We've never had an astrologer teach on it. So this is fascinating. Yeah, no, we're excited about your mastery class, by the way.
Oh,
We're
okay,
talking
cool.
about it. Yes.
Oh, yeah. It's one of my favorite subjects. And I feel like it's an additional way to have a deeper understanding, because each moon phase has some meaning associated with it. We'll look at the 8 phases of the moon. And I know, Amanda, you know that the Hawaiians have a 29 and sometimes 30-day phases of the moon, and they have a specific meaning for each of those.
Yes.
If I have time, I might share a little bit about that, but mostly the 8 phases. I'll probably be focusing on the 8 phases of the moon. So
Amazing. So great. So if you are interested in working with Cayelin and learning from Cayelin more, and also all the astrologers in this house series, you can get on the Inner Circle waitlist right now. We are opening in March of 2023, right around the spring equinox. And there are some great special gifts that we give to people who are on the waitlist. So go to astrologyhub.com/IC23. If you're watching this and this time period has already passed, just go ahead and go to our website and get on the wait list for the Inner Circle, and you'll be first to know when enrollment does open again. But for those of you listening to this series in real time, you can go to astrologyhub.com/IC23, and we'll make sure that you're the first to know when enrollment opens, and you'll get to work with Cayelin and all these amazing astrologers that you're meeting throughout this house series. Cayelin, thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure. It always is. Can't wait for more from you next year. And just thank you so much for being with us here during this house series.
I'm so delighted to share this and excited to be able to do this with you and the Astrology Hub. Thank you.
All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Thank you so much for being a part of our community. And thank you as always for making astrology a part of your life. We'll catch you on the next episode.